Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Startup Women's Industry Roundtable, Arts and Media. My name is Amanda Logan, and I am a Programs Officer with Startup Canada. To begin, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that the land on which I am located today is on the unceded and traditional territories of the Algonquin Anishinaabe, also known as Ottawa. As we are a national organization, I would also like to acknowledge, with respect, the diverse histories and cultures of all Indigenous peoples. I encourage you to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional territory that you are residing on today. Startup Canada is a national nonprofit that is the gateway to Canada's entrepreneurial ecosystem. We're here to connect entrepreneurs with the support, community, and tools they need to build a successful business in Canada. Startup Women is an annual program offering support to early stage women identifying entrepreneurs across Canada through topic focused webinars, industry roundtables like today's, and meetings with startup women leaders. These monthly industry roundtables will provide attendees with a deeper understanding of trends and best practices in their sector, and you will leave with actionable takeaways and resources that you can implement into your business. We also have a short message from our other co-presenting partner, the Scotiabank Women's Initiative, which we will show you now.
The Scotiabank Women Initiative is dedicated to your success on your terms.
I'm shaping our industry's vision for the future.
I can expand my business without borrowing from my family.
I know I can face anything, thanks to my network.
I'm ready for my next chapter.
I'm inspiring future leaders.
I'm making sure my family's future is secure.
Define your success, and we'll help you achieve it. With unbiased access to capital and tailored solutions, bespoke specialized education, and holistic advisory services and mentorship. Join our community of women today, the Scotiabank Women Initiative.
Thank you so much to Scotiabank. I would also like to thank our other co-presenting partner, UPS, our ecosystem partners, Mastercard, WEOC, and Constant Contact, and our community partners, and we will add the full list into the Zoom chat. So today's session is for women in arts and media, and we are very excited to dive into this discussion. We're going to add the schedule of today's events on the screen. So here we go. There we go. It's popping up now. As you can see, we're going to start off today with a round of speed introductions from each of you attendees. You can do this either on camera or in the chat. And then next, we'll hear 3 expert talks from our 3 guest speakers, followed by about 50 minutes of Q&A with our 3 speakers. The last part of today's session will be networking breakout rooms where everyone will get a chance to connect with 2 to 3 fellow attendees, and speakers will also be placed in these rooms with you. We have about 35 minutes carved out for these, and we'll do 3 rounds of them at 10 to 12 minutes each. Okay, we are going to get started now with attendee introductions. So if your camera is on, I'm going to assume you're comfortable introducing yourself out loud, and I'll call on your name to start. But if you prefer, you can also introduce yourself in the chat. So I'm just going to go in order of who I see on my screen first. So I see Sharlene.
Hi there. My name is Sharlene. I'm located in Edmonton, Alberta, and I'm a graphic designer and owner of Kind Design Studios. I work with value-led Canadian businesses to help them grow by designing people-first branding and websites that emotionally resonate with their target audience.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Next I see on my screen is Dee Wu. Oh, sorry, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Oh, sorry about that.
It's okay.
Hi, I'm Dee. I'm located in Clarke, Alberta. I'm the founder of Dotamize. It is a marketplace where people come together to explore and book art workshops and creative experiences. We offer a diverse range of hands-on art workshops led by some of Calgary's top creative talents, designed to bring people together and share the joy of creativity.
I love that. Thank you so much. We just had a few people just join, so just to let all of our new attendees know that we are doing introductions of all of our attendees right now. So next on my screen, I see Kimia.
Everyone, my name is Kimia Kahan. I'm calling in from Ottawa. My business is Con Corazon Designs, and I have a textile art business. Started out with quilting and moving into some other areas of textile work and also textile education, sewing education.
Awesome. Thank you. Nice to see you. I'm glad you're able to join us. Um, I'm going to pass it over to Isabel to introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Isabel Nolan, Director of Programs at Startup Canada. I'm very excited to be here today. I'm just listening in, but yeah, looking forward to the conversation. I have a background in music, it's what I studied in university, so the arts is very close to my heart. So thank you all so much for joining. I'll pass it back to you, Amanda.
Thank you, Isabel. Okay, that's everyone I see with their camera on. So if you'd like to introduce yourself, please do so in the chat. Share your LinkedIn link or your website. We would love to get to know all of you. Okay. Um, Next, we're going to be moving on to our speakers and their expert talks. We do encourage you to ask questions following the expert talks. You can do this either by typing your question to the chat or using the raise hand function, and we'll call on you to turn your microphone on. So without further ado, I'm honored to introduce our speakers today. So we are joined by Amanda Cupido, founder of Lead Podcasting. We are also joined by Sharlene Clarke, founder of Or Pair Social. And we have Megan Ashley, founder and creative director of Megan Ashley Creative. Thank you all so much for joining us. Okay, we are going to get started with our expert talks. And Amanda, I'm going to invite you to share your story first.
Thank you much. Thank you so much, fellow Amanda. I am so pleased to be here. I'm a big fan of Startup Canada. Have come out to multiple of the events and have even pitched. So it's a great community to be a part of, and it's really lovely to see everyone who showed up today. So I am the CEO and founder of Lead Podcasting, and this is a podcast production agency that creates podcasts for organizations and thought leaders. It was founded in 2020, but I have been making podcasts for a long time. I made my first one in 2010, and this is long before they were as popular as they are today. And so it was something that was, brewing in me a bit, but I always felt like it was not the right time. And so I was doing a lot of workshops. I was working in radio. I have a background in radio and journalism. I also had a role at a nonprofit where I was working in communications for a bit. And so I really started wanting to build my business from the beginning, and I was doing it on the side because it didn't really make sense to invest fully into incorporating and expanding, especially since at that time, so many people were saying, "What is a podcast?" And it is very hard to sell something when people don't even know what the something is, let alone the benefits and what your unique offering is. So I learned that really early, and I just thought, all right, I realize I can't sell something where I have to start with the definition of this thing. And so I kept it as something that I was doing on the side and iterating with my pricing, with my offerings. I was very responsive. I thought people would want X, Y, and Z, but people were wanting A, B, and Z. And so I started reformatting packages based on this slow dribble of work that was coming in on the side. And then when I was working at the nonprofit, I came out with my book, Let's Talk Podcasting, The Essential Guide to Doing It Right. And so that was the first edition. The second edition just came out last year, but that was in 2018. So this is now when I had this calling card, so to say, that I was able to get some more business and excitement around. But it still wasn't quite ready for me to take the plunge. And so what I was first was an intrapreneur, which is a word that I love. And for folks who are maybe in that situation and starting to build a business, I started with the workplace I was in. I was at a global nonprofit, and I started, banging on everybody's doors to say, why don't we make a podcast? Let me make a podcast. I'll do it off the side of my desk. And so I ended up making a podcast for the Canadian office. I then made a podcast for the international organization, which was a global podcast. And I eventually went to speak on a global stage in the Philippines within the organization to all the C-suite executives of the nonprofit to talk about this new innovative way of storytelling, which is podcasting. And so this was an amazing opportunity for me, not only to hone my speaking skills on a large stage, but also to get some great case studies under my belt, do something great for the organization, but continue to build my portfolio. And so if anybody finds themselves in that situation, I do tell them to lean in. It was the best thing I could have done. And so then when the pandemic hit, everything changed. And the nonprofit I was working for said if anyone would like to put their hand up for a buyout, then we'd be getting a little top up on our severance if they had another opportunity. And I just thought, all right, this was the sign. And so I put my hand up, took that little bit of extra severance and put that into building my business. So launched in the pandemic by design. And as you likely know, podcasting in the pandemic boomed, and it was one of the many points of connection for folks. And so my business went off really fast, but recognizing that I had 10 years of doing this on the side leading up to that moment. But yes, I did scale quite quickly. So I made that decision in July. I incorporated in September. I hired my first full-time employee 6 months after that. So it was really fast, scary, but I was learning along the way. And so now we are at any given time producing around 15 different shows. And my team has grown in really interesting way. At first, I was trying to bring people on full time and create really specific jobs for them. But I think also, as we'll recall, during this time, there was a lot of flux in work and what people were wanting. And actually, it was definitely people wanting more of this gig economy. And even people I was trying to recruit, they were like, oh, I don't want full time, but I would want to take on a couple shows. And then eventually my full time staffer was like, can I be part time? And I was like, okay. So I shifted my business to being contractors and part time payroll folks, which I didn't even realize was an option to have people on part time payroll. But I learned that and built my business that way. Now the job market's shifted. Everybody seems to want a full-time job, but we've kind of built it out this way. So I do have a contractor that's on for 35 hours a week. And then I have another manager who's part-time payroll. And someone who helps me with my finances and myself who's full-time. So that's our core. And then we expand and contract based on what shows we're in production on. And so every producer who works with us has 2 to 3 shows, and we still treat it like a team. We have a Slack. We have all hands meetings. We have a holiday party. We do have people from across Canada, so if they can't attend, we send out little gifts to them so they could celebrate wherever they are. But most of us are based here in Toronto, where I am. And it's been an exciting ride. I even was hesitant to call myself an entrepreneur for many years until one of my mentors shook me and was like, you are an entrepreneur. And I think sometimes when you're in the creative industry, you just feel like you're pursuing your passion. I just made the job that I wanted that didn't really exist. And so definitely now leaning into that term though, and have learned a lot on the journey, and I'm continuing to learn every single day.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Amanda. I know I say the hill that I'm going to die on is telling people that artists are entrepreneurs. Uh, and that's incredible, a pandemic success story. That is very motivating to hear that it can happen. I'm going to pass it over to Shaw now, if you could introduce yourself.
Yes, of course. Thank you guys for having me today. My name is Sharlene, if you can pronounce the accent in my name. If you can't, it's okay. You can stick with Shah. I am an art lover, art professional, community builder, lots of things, but I would say those are the main things. And of course, an event planner, because I am the founder of Ocraft Social, which is a social group and events company that's based here in Ottawa, in the capital. So I'm seeing lots of similarities in your story, Amanda, because at the time when we launched, which was in June of 2022, there weren't many things going on. We had just a couple, events to choose from in terms of social events. And of course, we are Black owned and Black centered. So that is our main focus and target audience. And we have lots of options now, which is really, really great to see. But at the time, that was our main focus. We didn't have lots of options, particularly for young Black adults in the capital, and for events that you would feel, comfortable and safe in. So our main thing is that it's sometimes a bit hard to describe what we do because we do a bit of everything. And I have a few pictures and slides prepared here to show you a bit what, some to capture a little bit of the essence of what we do. But yeah, we didn't have much to choose from. So one thing that I was very focused on is that, we could host different types of things. We could host networking events, paint nights, art shows. But the thing that remains is that we want to be authentic and real. But we also want to have like a sort of luxe element where you don't need to sacrifice either the entertainment or the hospitality that you would get in a, more premium experience. So that was the main issue that I thought that we had as we were, growing up, becoming adults. The moment you turn 19, it's like, okay, where are the events? I can finally have a glass of wine, a drink, and we didn't have that many options to choose from. So I sort of dipped my toe in right before the pandemic. The pandemic happened, and I was like, well, I gotta reshift and refocus. I don't think this is going to work. And so after the pandemic, I relaunched as Off-Path Social in June of 2022, and we've been operating since then. And we've been hosting a bit of everything. So I'll share some pictures with you guys so it can make a bit more sense. And please forgive me if my computer is a bit slow. I have a bad habit of keeping 17 tabs open because it helps me, but it can be a bit annoying for other people. So this is who we are. Off-Path Social, off-path means unmatched or unparalleled in French. And it kind of is a not so obvious way of saying we are one of one and we do things in a way that's a little bit different. We're bold. We are very daring. And you might see that in our brand voice if you follow us on social media or if you keep up with our website. We say things how they are, and so that's, I think, the image that people have of us. We're sort of the non-BS, homegirl that you're going to go to if you want to find a good event that we will host. But we also put out lots of information on things that are happening in the city. Art shows, festivals that you can keep up with if you want to make the best out of your experience in Ottawa, which I know Ottawa doesn't always have a good rep. So we just try to, make the best out of our time here. So that's who we are. This is a snapshot of a few of our events that we've hosted. As you'll see, the paint night on the right, a few of our networking events in the middle. We also host a black tie anniversary party every June. And so you'll see a few pictures. A few day parties as well, which is my favorite because I like to be in bed by 10 p.m. I'm a little bit boring like that. But yeah, this is who I am. As I mentioned, I'm the founder, the creator of Off-Path Social. So I host events under Off-Path Social, but I also work with other companies and groups as a contractor. And that's somewhat new. I started that about a year and a half ago to host events for them or do a bit of, coordination, project management work as well. So this is a snapshot of the events series social clubs that we've created, and all of this falls under Off-Path Social. So the events that come up and that we host multiple times a year are Débranché, Palme, and Peinture and Prosecco. So our Unplugged Open Mic Night, which is really, really fun. It's probably one of my favorites. Palme, which is our Afro-Caribbean day party, and Peinture and Prosecco experience. Social clubs is, we have one called the Ottawa Black Creatives Hub, social club and community for Black creatives in the capital and Black entrepreneurs. OT Digital, somewhat of new territory. It just launched in May, and it's a social club and sort of agency for content creators in the capital. And our special / yearly events, Plus Un, which is our Black Tie anniversary party, Trippy Our DNA, which is Ottawa's first Black hair art show that we're really, really proud of. And the Ottawa Black Creatives Hub showcase, which is a performing arts showcase for Black artists in the capital. So I wasn't lying when I said we do a bit of everything, and sometimes it's hard to explain when somebody says, "So what type of events do you do?" And I say, really, it's kind of a bit of everything, honestly. So a few images of the events that we hosted. You'll see the showcase on the bottom right, the launch of O2 Digital on the bottom left, Palm bottom center, a few pictures of Creepy Our DNA, which is the Black Hair Art Show, and the top is a special event that we hosted in partnership with the National Arts Center, which is called Blackout Night, and we hosted a 20s themed mixer and party called Renaissance, which is saluting the period, the Harlem Renaissance, which was a cultural boom that happened in New York, in Harlem specifically for Black arts and Black culture. So, and that was me doing an interview. Don't always do them, but sometimes I do them. Our motto, premium curated Black AF. I don't know if I can swear on here, so I'll just keep it PG. But I think all of you know what that means. And it kind of speaks to how we are and how we speak to our community, which is the non-BS, point of contact that you can just stay in touch with if you want to know what's happening in the city. I would say that that's a snapshot of what we do and who we are.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Shaw. Obviously, Shaw and I know we've had the chance to work together on the Ottawa Black Creatives Performance Showcase, and it's so cool being an Ottawa local to see the boom of Hors Social, and also just the platform that you use your platform to platform Black artists in Ottawa. I just think that is incredible. So thank you for sharing. And lastly, I'm going to pass it over to our third speaker, Megan.
Okay. It's hard to follow up after the two of you. My goodness. No, it's awesome. It's funny. I just had a discussion with someone about how at some point, and I'm pretty sure all of our careers, we felt intimidated by someone else in business or someone we've met. And I very quickly realized in my time that we're all the same and we all do things equally as awesome. So I kind of wanted to naturally apparently start with that. Yeah, I love that everyone's sharing all their stuff in the chat because I'm just like you. And if I can connect with you or help you in any way, we're equal. So it's kind of an interesting thing when we get to that point. We're like, okay, I want everyone to know we're all the same. So yeah, my name is Megan. I founded Megan Ashley Creative in 2019. It actually started in about 2016. I started as a wedding photographer. And in 2019, well, 2018, I went through a divorce and my business name was my maiden name. And so in 2019, I had to kind of rebrand myself. And I knew at some point in my life I wasn't going to be just a photographer. I loved it, but I just had this gut instinct that I was not going to. And in my mind at the time, I thought I was going to be a videographer or a filmmaker because I'd always been in love with that. And somehow I ended up running a graphic design and marketing agency, but here we are. So yeah, I continued through doing wedding photography and photography in general as my sole sort of income business. And then COVID, funny that we all kind of had this like pivotal moment during a national worldwide pandemic. And I, at the time, was a single parent with 2 kids and lost most of my income because of COVID and thought I had never had a formal education. Not that I feel like it's necessary to be successful, but for me, I had always wanted to go to school for something creative. And at the time when I was young, I had 2 very creative parents. I have an artist mom and a writer of a dad, but there was no like path to creative education in the late 90s, early 2000s. It was like, go be a lawyer, go do, the very traditional lines of work. So during COVID, there was some grants and whatnot because of my having kids, and I just sort of decided to put myself through university. So, excuse me. So I started university in 2020 and somehow developed it into being there for 5 years and starting my own sort of freelance graphic design business. So I went to school for graphic design and I just graduated in the spring of this year. It took me 5 years, but I picked away at it because I really, really wanted to kind of finish something. It was just like a goal of mine to put myself through school. And I think that that really, school was a great place for me because I got to actually explore all the different aspects that I love to do. I think both Amanda and Shaw mentioned like their passion for multiple things. And I think as creative people, we tend to pick, we don't just have one specific thing that we're passionate about. And I know it's difficult to sort of package that into a business. And that was something I struggled with for a long time. I love wedding photography, but I also love web design. So how do I wrap those things into businesses? So the cool thing about school and being there was I was able to just try things. And if they failed, they failed. And when I graduated, I was able to kind of take that time to put things into different businesses. So I moved my photography business over to a place called the Cheeky Club, which we don't have to get into. It's a very niche space for photography. And I decided that Megan Ashley Creative would be this like creative hub, agency, studio, whatever I wanted to call it. And I took that time to kind of figure out what it is that I wanted to offer people. And while I have all these different skills and I wasn't sure how to put that out there, I realized that even with wedding photography, I've always led with like how I can help people. And when I kind of took it from that perspective, it didn't feel so clunky anymore, whether it was web design, photography, mentoring, all of those things. If I built my business, my creative business around the idea that I was helping somebody achieve something, complete something, chase a dream, whatever it was, it all felt really aligned. So that's kind of where I ended up in this space and how I landed here speaking at this event was just sort of, yeah, leading with the helping people mindset. And I think that that's really helped me sort of cultivate my brand and what it is that I put out into the world. And I also, on a personal note, this past year was diagnosed with ADHD, and that also helped me really like pivot in my business because I think I struggled for a long time with all the ideas and all of the things and how to organize. And once I kind of addressed that part of my life, I realized how much I was struggling trying to make something happen for myself because I was going in six different directions. Now, my ADHD diagnosis was not the only reason I was able to pivot my business to where it is now, but it definitely, yeah, made me realize that I had to sort of address some of my own personal things in order to kind of get to where I wanted to be. So my brain was really kind of in the way, and it took me a little while to realize that it's actually my most valued asset because ADHD is pretty awesome once you know how to use it to your advantage. So yeah, that's sort of like myself, my story. Yeah. I went over by a minute and 15 seconds. I'm
No,
sorry.
you're all good. You're all good. I'm not timing you. I'm not timing you. Thank you so much for sharing, Megan. A couple times there you said the word pivot, and I'm like, yeah, that is like pivot. I feel like is going to be a big theme today. That is a necessity of artists.
Yeah.
You know, um, building businesses in our field. So thank you to our speakers for sharing your stories. We're going to move now into our discussion with our speakers. Throughout this time, any of our attendees, please feel free to ask questions as well. You can do this either by using the raise hand function, and I will call on you to ask your question out loud, or you are welcome to type your question into the chat. Okay, I'm going to start off with a couple questions for any of our speakers to answer, and then I'll go into maybe some more specific ones. To start off, of course, today's webinar is focused on women in arts and media. So to get started, could each of you demonstrate a landscape of our industry and speak to the unique barriers that women identifying creatives specifically face in artistic industries, whether in publishing, performance, production, or digital media, that you feel like are still not talked about enough? If there's anyone who wants to go first, or I'll just Amanda.
Sure, I can start.
Awesome.
So I think I'll speak about podcasting specifically, and then I'll zoom out to speak more broadly. But for sure in podcasting, there are a lot of barriers for women. There is new research that just came out that highlights the gender gap in women hosts in the top 100 Apple podcasts, and even women as guest experts on podcasts. And we're not even close to the 50-50 split. And so I think that just goes to show that, and even on women hosted shows, the guests are still a lot of men, depending on the category. But in business and finance, we're really, the percentages are quite jarring actually to see. It's true crime where we are at par, and then everything else, it's quite dismal. And so I just think from a gender equity perspective, this like already boils my blood, and I'm like, more women need to have their voice out there and make podcasts and not be afraid, and then be booked as guests and book other women as guests. And so I think there's a lot of space there for growth, and that's been an uphill battle in since the earliest days of podcasting, but also in radio, which is my background, where in very commonly in Canada, you would also not hear two women on the radio at the same time. The co-hosts would either be two men or a man and a woman, but like there was just less jobs for on-air talent for women. And sadly, that's actually still the case today. It's very rare. You'll hear two women co-hosting a radio show together. And that was just because data showed that people can't differentiate the differences between women's voices. That's like the fact that keeps getting recited in radio boardrooms. So I could go on and on that for a long time, but it is quite frustrating, and that this is still very real. When we look at the business landscape, I do think that a lot of times, especially with my particular industry, which is podcasting, there's a technical element to this. And there is always an assumption that I do not handle my own tech, which is wild. Again, I was an end-to-end producer, editor, sourcing my own equipment. And a lot of questions I'd get asked is, oh, but who's doing your editing for you? I was like, I do it myself. Why are you assuming I don't edit my own shows? It's very surprising, but still very anecdotally evident to me. And so I think there's a lot of these little moments. And then in business as well, I feel like when I've been navigating the landscape, even with resources, I find that a lot of resources for entrepreneurs targeting women speaks down to women. And so a lot of even when I was looking for support in building out some of my price structures, I was always getting resources that assumed I didn't know anything about cash flow. And so I think this assumption that all women are really far from where the average male, resources would begin, that's something I've also noticed. And so these are the things that I just think will take time. And as we continue to speak out more about what we need, what we're capable of, we'll be able to move the needle.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Megan or Shaw, anything to add?
I definitely agree with what Amanda is saying. It's very frustrating. And I would say that in my position, it's also a little bit tricky because I have to put on so many hats on the day-to-day. And, I could be an advocate, a community builder, all of these things, but I'm also a business owner, an entrepreneur. I also somewhat produce the shows that I put on. So I find that when it comes to art and advocacy, it's much easier to take in what I'm saying and take it as Bible and just assume like she knows what she's saying because, she's a woman. She's probably been involved in, her community, put on lots of things and, been very resourceful for the people that are near her in her community. But the moment that the conversation shifts into more technical, business related things, that's when there's a little bit of skepticism. And that I have to make sure that I'm choosing the right words and being taken seriously. But I almost always have to wear both hats. So it's odd because as it was mentioned before, like it's much easier to take it, like it's easier to make those assumptions that, community advocacy, like, yeah, I can definitely take your word for it. The business side of things, like, oh, is there a man behind this, or is there someone else that I can talk to? Is there a man on the team that maybe would want to join this conversation? But it's all me. So I find that it's a little bit odd and difficult to navigate, but I think that we're doing our best and we're definitely making strides and, improving this. But it's definitely an odd position to be in because I can't split myself and just, go by another name and, transform into a man for these conversations. I know that some people would probably hope that could be, possible, but it's not. I'm the same person. So, yeah, I don't even know if there's a solution for this yet or what would need to be improved. I always say that, racism, sexism, all of these things are global issues that seep into all industries. And unfortunately, we will see, these issues in our interactions and some of the things that are mentioned here today. Very unfortunate, but I think that the only way to improve this and get past this is to also tackle the root issue, which is unfortunately, sexism, the patriarchy, the non-sexy stuff to talk about, which is unfortunately deeply rooted. So that would be my answer.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. I mean, I think a lot of it too is like openly talking about it, right? Women actually sharing their experiences of what it's like maybe to sometimes be in these boardrooms or at the bank, asking if you have a male co-signer. I've gone through that before, and so I think all of us having these conversations and being open about it is really important. Megan, was there anything you want to add at all?
Yeah, I'll add something really quick. It's interesting. I actually just our local Chamber of Commerce, we have a Women's Leadership Council department that was created last year, and I just joined this year. And I feel like we had this discussion about that there are, people in our chamber. Our city has had the Chamber of Commerce for quite some time. And there's a lot of like old guard, older guys, older men, who kind of have opinions about business and how it should be run. And then I come in and I'm like, jazz hands, like, I don't care what you think. And it's really cool because the Women's Leadership Council that we're creating allows all of us to sit in a boardroom as women and have the same conversations without that bias. And it has really helped the confidence level to be able to have that same conversation in a room with, men, older men, especially older men with opinions on how to run a business and to have that confidence. So I think that's been a big sort of cool experience for me, is being able to do something like this where you're in a room with women who are speaking confidently, who are sharing, and then leaving with that, no, I can say that out loud and I am right without feeling that am I type of feeling. So I just wanted to share that.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing, Megan. One of the biggest conversations and challenges that entrepreneurs and artists have can and usually always is funding. Could each of you take a moment to speak on how you communicate the value of creative work specifically to funders, investors, or partners who may not fully understand the artistic process? If you could speak to where you've seen success in raising capital, or alternatively, where you haven't, and what you've done, to still have funding for your organization, or have you just bootstrapped your whole way to your success? I'll start with Amanda.
Yeah, I think we're going in this order. That's fine. I can kick us off. So there's kind of two parts to that question. So the first one is, how do we communicate our work? And I struggled with this a lot because there's so much that goes into podcast production. I'm such an artist and I'm trying to describe every single step of my process, even to potential clients. And it's overwhelming for them. They don't know half the terminology. And I think I was scaring people away in the beginning. And so I actually worked with somebody as a business coach who was not in my industry. And this was really great. And I didn't realize how valuable it would be to get somebody who didn't know anything about podcasting business. He was a fan and kind of listened. And that's where my most clients are at, right? So I was communicating with him, my packages and my services, and he's like, whoa, and he helped me pare down all that I do. And he was like, even just the number of steps. So he was like, bring it down to 4 steps. Even if each of those steps have a million subset steps, you really don't go more than that because people can't even handle that, like wrap their head around more. So that was like our magic number was 4. How do we distill this process down to 4 steps? And so for us, it was show development, episode mapping, production, and then distribution and marketing. And that's like anybody can wrap their head around those 4 simple headlines. And then I could go in more depth if people were asking or needed it or knew a little bit more. But having a simplified roadmap of what does end-to-end projects look like with you and maybe 4 simple steps is really great, and talk to somebody who's not in your industry to help you establish what those words are and how to break them down. So that's, and it started with me writing every single thing we do down in order, and then we kind of highlighted and pared it down and got to our 4. So that's a tip number 1 for how do you communicate exactly what you do. It's tough. Part 2 was about the funding. And what I'll say is I really struggled with getting, entering contests, applying for grants, pitching in competitions. There's so many resources available and funding available out there, actually. I find that there's a lot now. But you could also get completely bogged down by all of these. And I was never winning any of them. I wasn't even getting shortlisted. And I'm a service-based industry. So already service-based industries are tough to get funding. On top of that, I was in the arts. So like it was almost like a double whammy for me. And I really struggled. And it was actually taking a hit not only on how I was thinking about my business, but also my time and how much time I was allocating to all of these applications and videos. And, that same business coach said to me, if you actually just put that time into getting new clients, you probably would get more money than what that grant would have been, which is a one-off. And if you actually got a client who's going to be recurring, that money it's going to grow so much more. And I never really looked at it that way. And that just changed everything for me. So I have no outside funding. I've completely self-funded, and I stopped applying to all these things. And that's actually was the best thing for my business. My business has grown the most after I decided to no longer put effort into those elements. And I just worked harder at networking at events and, creating marketing opportunities for myself and my business. And so, I think there are sometimes that does work for people and it's amazing. But for me, I actually didn't do it, and that's okay. And it still worked out for me. And I've been a profitable business without it. So, if it's not feeling like it's a fit for you, or if it is causing some crunchiness, I would say just let it go.
Yeah, and that's great. That's an honest experience of what it's like, what it's like to be, pitching your, artistic endeavors. But I really, really love your the feedback that you received of like your 4 pillars, and because I think sometimes any entrepreneur, not just in the arts, we're so passionate about our projects that we can kind of get lost in the sauce a little bit and think that people are really excited about your niche items that maybe takes too much explaining. And so, I always go back to that classic acronym of like keep it simple, stupid, right? Or stupid, simple, right? Like just keep it baseline. So thank you for sharing that. That's fantastic. Shaw, what has your experience been with accessing funding?
I'll be honest, funding is probably my least favorite thing about hosting events. I can't say I hate it, but it's not my favorite thing to do because of that explaining that you have to do a lot of the time, but also being on the back end of certain, associations and groups, and, all of the logistics that go into transferring the funds and getting it back and getting a report. I also understand why we need to do that explaining, especially if you're getting large amounts. But I still dislike it. So it's not my favorite part. But I believe that we've been pretty successful in getting funding for bigger projects that have been really impactful. So the events that we host ourselves, those series that come back multiple times a year, are all self-funded. And that I would just, that was really just me working, extra hard, sometimes working extra jobs to be able to fund those things. There is, where I'm from, we always say, scared money don't make no money. So Sometimes you just have to put a little bit more of what you actually care about, which is, your own funds, and it will pay out. Sometimes it doesn't, but it's a risk. But it's so rewarding when it does, because you were really at your last dollar and you made it work. So I've definitely been in that position a couple of times. Probably a few of our, some of the bigger events that we hosted, like the anniversary parties. Like if I told you guys some of the invoices that I, were returned my way, like I almost screamed. But I made it work, and it was successful, and people had a good time. For the bigger projects, like Cupido DNA, which is a really big project, the last edition was hosted at the Museum of Science and Tech on Saint Laurent, and it was a 2-day production. It started as an event that was on one evening at the Saw Gallery. It started really small. I think it was about 100 to 110 people. Then we moved on to the Museum of Science and Tech, which was about 350 people on year 2. And on year 3, which was in this past February, it was about 300 people daily. So we've grown a lot. And for those types of productions, funding is really necessary. The way that we've gone about it is that I don't know how this will sound, but I kind of didn't care about funding till I needed to care about it. So what I was focusing on was the trust of my community, and putting on really good things that people truly enjoy attending and participating in. And, that word of mouth of people saying, I enjoyed my time there, you should go too. So when it was time to apply for funding, it was 2 things. I could say, look at what I did without funding. So I'm able to do it. I have the capacity, I have the experience, I have the talent. And 2, my community trusts me. So this is why you should give me the money. If I was coming sort of empty-handed and I didn't have as many projects under my belt that were not funded by, these institutions, then there could be some sort of more questioning around that. But I kind of had that mentality that, if I get the funding, it's great that I can, host this twice or 3 times. If I don't get it, my community will support me. I'll figure out a way. I always tell myself that I'm a go-getter and I'm a getter-doner. So I will make it happen, whether you give me the money or not, but it's truly impactful and you can hear from my community directly. So I think you should give it to me. So it's kind of like, it has the same energy as like the FU money that they talk about, where you can decide to leave if you want. So it's kind of like, well, yeah, you should give it to me. Like, look at what I've done, a little bit cocky, but it works. And honestly, men do it all the time. So I think we can do it. And talking about the second part of the question, which is how do you, prove the impact, and how do you do that sort of translation and improving that the events or things that you put on are impacting your community enough for you to get this funding? That is also a tricky one for me in particular, because the events that we put on sometimes can be very, I don't know if personal would be the right word, but a project like Cupido DNA, which is a Black hair art show, my co-founder on the project, Sandra, who's the owner of the Moving Art Gallery, to give you a snapshot, her sister attended the first show. And when she entered the space and looked at the gallery, I think she was about maybe 5 or 6. And so it was the first exhibition that she, toured. And she was like, oh my gosh, that little girl looks like me. And that melted Sandra's heart, because she was able to put on, a show that was for friends, family, community, but it also impacted her immediate family, which she didn't even think, or I'm sure she probably thought about it, but it didn't really, it wasn't obvious to her till that her sister was in the space. And it's like, wow, the first gallery or the first art exhibit that my sister attended would have been, one that highlighted Black hair, the same type of hair that she has. And that's so heartwarming and impactful. So how do I put that in a grant report? I don't know, it's kind of difficult. Or some people that, send us a voice note on Instagram that say, the showcase that we hosted at Algonquin, we got tagged in a video a couple of days after it happened, and someone had brought their nephew whose father had passed away a couple months ago. And so this show was a gift to her nephew, and it was during Black History Month. And the nephew was so inspired because they got to see so many Black artists on stage that they weren't introduced to before. And the nephew's super into art, into the arts. And so this was just a very, impactful moment for him. And so how do I put that in the grant report without also like going into the ethical stuff of like sharing, like confidentiality? It's hard, but you have to be able to extract some of that information that is important and that these institutions have to learn about. They have to know the not so typical experiences that people have that stay with them sometimes for the rest of their lives. So I can't say that there's an exact formula to doing it, but we've tried our best in trying to do a bit of that translation and going back and forth between community and institutions and saying it's important, take a look, but also if you don't think it's valuable, we'll just go somewhere else. So that I would say is that's been our experience and how we've gone about it.
Thank you for sharing. I think a lot of the time in the arts, our evidence feels anecdotal, right? It is personal stories. It is those like connections that you're making, and that can be hard to put in a statistic. And so, while this does take extra effort and time, which we all have limited of, I always recommend like if you can't show up to like your community town halls or opportunities for advocacy or, meeting with counselors, like I think those are the times where you can say like I get some FaceTime with you and I get to share you these stories that hopefully you'll walk away with an impact. Because Shaw, you told me that story about the nephew who attended the performing arts showcase a year and a half ago, and I've never forgotten it, right? Those things really stick with people and remind them to advocate and potentially help find funding. Megan, what has your experience been raising capital, starting your own business?
Yeah, it's interesting because yes, I have not applied for grants within my business. I have clients that will come to me and say they got a grant for like a bit of a website or specific niches. We also have an advocacy group here in BC called Community Futures. I don't know if that's just BC specific or if there's other ones in other provinces. But they're a group that essentially you get like so many hours when you first start with them towards helping you find grants and be able to apply for grants as well. So it's kind of a cool program. It's not something I've explored myself, but I've had clients do. I essentially, same as Amanda, I was so intent on building this for myself that I put in the time and the time really into sort of, making sure that I was able to support my family and do the thing that I love at the same time. And Shaw, what you were saying about like how to communicate those things, I think the more we lean into that storytelling part of it, and it's so non-traditional because, yes, grant writing is very specific and you have to have like certain words in there or just descriptors or like you said, statistics type of thing. But I think anytime that I was just reading a comment by Sharlene, I hope I say your name right, I'm really sorry, about networking and like trying to communicate your value in your business. And I think that like, and I don't know how else to say it, but like that heart-led, that story-led sort of mindset has almost always gotten my foot in the door with any person, whether it's the mayor of my city, somebody that works at a bank, 70-year-old man who has no idea what I do. I think when we kind of communicate with the why we're doing what we're doing and that like story part of it, people are always going to connect with that, especially right now there's so much stuff out there that we're like, what is this? That's been like probably my biggest success with gaining larger clients as well, is just the reason I do this is because I want you to go from here to here. And my clients in the past have gone from here to here, and this is their story. And that's been a huge sort of like aha moment for me in advocating for what I do and sort of asking for money from clients and what I do. And that's just kind of, hopefully that answers that question a little. I feel like I don't want to say the same thing as everybody else, but I think we're on the right track there, and hopefully that was somewhat helpful.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. It definitely is. Thank you so much. And even if like our stories are similar, right? It's important that we all recognize that we're, having the same or similar struggles and or successes. While we're in the conversation of money, I like this question from Haley in the chat. She'd love to hear more about how you all approach your pricing structures and how you price your services. This is one of the elements that she says she's struggled the most with as an entrepreneur and feeling like her work is constantly undervalued. Um, Whoever would like to jump in first if they have a experience with it.
Sure, I hate this part too. This was like the most stressful part, especially podcasting, because it was like there was no other podcast business that I could even go look like. It's a new industry. So it's like, who's setting the rates here? We are just making it up. And um, so what I did was, okay, so there are a combination of different things that helped me along the way, but also just wanting to validate like how stressful this can be no matter what. And you want to know your value and you don't want to get undersold. You don't want to scare people away. I get it. Um, so I think there is a little bit of just trying things. And sometimes you just pick a number and you just see how they respond. And that's going to just trial and error. Like that's just part of it. And so if people were just really quickly saying yes, I just thought, oh, maybe then I can up that a bit. And like at what point, what threshold you kind of want them to still feel like they're getting a great value, but you're not underselling yourself. So finding that right balance. I did do so a little bit of trial and error. I sometimes would ask, what's your budget? And if they're able to, or what's your range of budget? So sometimes I could formulate something based on a budget, which in the early days helped me, but also understanding what amount of work goes in. And I don't like hourly. Hourly anything was for me was just a no-go because I'm really good at what I do. So I do it fast. I'm a fast editor. So what, I'm going to get paid less because I'm quick at it. So I stayed away from hourly. How I structure mine is flat rate per deliverable. So what it, and that's also easy for your client to start wrapping their head around. There's less surprise charging for them. And then I charge flat rate out to subcontractors who work for me. So everything is flat rate. So everybody knows exactly how much money they're getting, how much they're being charged. And I can also ensure I'm always not losing money. I'm making it profitable. So for instance, it's per episode rate for the client, per episode rate for my producer that I'm paying. And I would structure it so that 50% was going to the contractor and then 50% was going to my business, knowing that 25% was going to be like hard costs and my time and 25% would be profit. That was just my rough way of coming up with numbers. And so that might not be the same depending on what you're selling, but that was it for me. And it's continued to work. And then, yes, I've been able to maintain about a 25 to 28% profit rate because of that structure that I just implemented across the board. The only time I flip into hourly is when it's out of scope. And so they're asking for something that wasn't part of the contract. And then I say, all right. And then we have a pre-established hourly rate. Again, it's the same percentage model for the client and for the contractor. And then what we do is get approval. Okay, hey, you've now pinged the, this isn't out of scope. We estimate it will be this hours. Do you give us approval? Yes. And then the contractor will bill me the hourly, and then I just take those hours and accordingly bill the client. And that's the only time I'm really doing hourly, unless I'm doing a 1 hour consult with me, which again, that was all just a trial and error of like, how much do I think people would pay to sit down for an hour with me? And that's still an evolution. I'm still figuring that out. And then I also then did one other tier that might be helpful is that I started doing for my own hourly, it was different depending on what the work was. So I don't just have an hourly rate. So if you want 1 hour of host coaching where I'm like with talent and I'm helping them become a host and you might only need 1 hour for that's it, that's going to be a higher hourly than if somebody wants me to be consulting on a show and maybe one of the hours is I'm sitting in on a meeting and one of the hours is I'm listening to one of the episodes, right? And one of the hours is me actually giving them advice, right? That hourly rate's going to be lower because I'm not in like the coaching mode. So, no, recognizing that you shouldn't just have like one magic number that is a catch-all. It should really be based on what kind of service you're providing.
What was the actual rate?
For which one?
For your flat.
Well, it's different. So that's why there's not just like one, it's different depending on the type of episode. So like, for instance, if we were going to be charging an episode rate of $2,000 for the episode, then that could be because we are doing, sound, like, does it include sound design? Yes or no, right? So then if it was 2,000, then we would do 1,000 would go to all the producers who need to work on it, right? That would be my 50%. So maybe the sound designers, now then it gets nuanced. How many people are working on this? So if it's a sound designer, how much of their work needs to get compensated? But I would take that 1,000, divide it up amongst everybody who worked on it, and then the other 1,000 would come back in-house. But yeah, like an episode, we say at Lead Podcasting our minimum spend is 10,000. I also think it's important to have a minimum spend threshold. So that, and that you actively talk about, because then you weed out people that might not be an ideal client. So that's one number that we right out of the gate say. It's a $10,000 minimum spend, but we could spend it in different ways. Here are some options.
I think it's good that you mentioned that. I actually went to the Future of Skills event held by the Ministry of Canada. They basically all had to apologize to us for not distributing any real funds. It's a lot of talking, and a lot of applications filed. And I did go through this entire summer. I think I filled out maybe 50 different grant applications, and none of them went through. It's a huge waste of resource, time, brain energy, money. My team basically went elsewhere while I was going through this process. They're like, what's happening next, Kajana? I'm like, I don't know. I think I'm supposed to go through this grant situation, but they're not giving the dollars out. So finally we said, we're just going to close the year out with whatever it is. The rate is just 10K. And I just want to reiterate that it's important to just state the fact and stop apologizing for it and stop trying to give reasons for why the bill is what it is, because nobody else goes through this, not lawyers, not probate estate attorneys, not the doctors, not the surgeons, not the dentists. Nobody goes through this. Only us. For some reason, they said we're usually racialized because we're not getting the job appointment. So therefore, we have to go into the entrepreneurial route, right? So the work is to literally know your value, know your work, be amazing at your craft, and charge your rate. And that is it. And if it's not your client, it's not your client.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I'll say, one other thing, a tip on that note of like that validation and justification. Sometimes you throw in little free things along the way, and then you might do that out of the goodness of your heart, or you might do that because it's such a small thing. But I do think to attach a value to every single thing you do, and your rate is your rate, like that is so important. And what I would actually do on invoices is if they had an extra consult call with me that I wasn't going to charge them for, I still put rate, and I $200 for the hour, free consult, but then strike through, but shown the value of every single thing they got, even if I didn't actually charge for it, because I found sometimes people were coming back to me claiming I was nickel and diming them, and little did they know I had already given them so many things for free. And so from that moment on, I just started listing literally everything. Keep a little Google Doc going. I do, of like, oh, gave them this, topped on this call, sent them over a template. And then at the end, add that on the invoice so they actually see, oh, we actually got this so much extra value. It's another tip to help with justification of what we're doing and how much work we're putting into these projects.
Can I add in just another layer about pricing? I think that one thing that's also important is I find that it's important to add nuance to these conversations, because so many people, on this call, but also in the world, in our community, in our entrepreneurial networks, are at different stages in their career and in their journey. So I think that it's one thing that's really important is to work your way up to that sort of unapologetic FU money vibe, where it's like, you want to take the contract or not? I'm not saying that you have to take on everything that comes your way as you're starting up, but you also have to learn to negotiate certain things as you're working up and building your network, becoming better at what you're doing. But I think that it's also important to have to do like a real and realistic assessment of where you're at in your career and what you should be charging. So I totally agree. Sometimes it's a bit of trial and error. I've done it before where I tried the like half of the amount before like a deposit, and then after I've asked for, just as a trial and error thing, I asked for everything up front before and they gave it to me. And I was like, okay, some people are okay with doing it, because if I'm involved in my community and my face is everywhere and I'm going to your networking event, I'm not going to take your money. So there are lots of people that are okay with just paying it. At least it's off the books and they can, say that it's been dealt with to accounting, and they rather just get to the planning of it. Some people are okay with that. Some people aren't. They want to see some things, in motion before they do it. But some people are totally fine with doing some things up front. I think that having a sort of equation where, for some people the hourly works. I know that for me it doesn't, because it's like I know that sometimes when I go to sleep, I'll have an idea or three on the, for the project that I'm working on. How do I charge for that? It's kind of impossible. So I rather have a rate where even if I go over my hours, it's okay, because I want to deliver a project that I think is up to my standards. And also sticking to what you say. I think that, being unapologetic and not sort of beating around the bush will save you a lot of time, because to those people that you're talking to and you're saying, I could maybe see if I could work this out, blah, blah, blah. Those are the people that are going to be, haggling, negotiating with for sometimes weeks and months, and it's just not worth it. So when you are at that stage where you're like, I know my worth, I know my price, and this is what I want to charge, I say, so you can sometimes even start the conversation with that is, usually what you'd be looking at is around this price. Like, is this something that you want to move forward with? Some people will be like, oh, like, okay, this is up there in price. Some people will say this is manageable, but at least everything is out in the open. You don't need to be, surprising people with extra fees and things like that. Like, they know what they're getting into. So that's the approach that at this point I've taken on, because not only do I have my monthly events that I host, I have another job, I have, multiple contracts in motion. So it's kind of like what you're getting. And I saw a video a couple weeks ago about a celebrity makeup artist that was talking about his experience with pricing, which I thought was really interesting. When you reach a certain stage, the client is not just paying for your hourly rate, they're also paying for your time away from different contracts that you can't take if you're taking on that contract, right? So if a makeup artist, that celebrity makeup artist that is working on your campaign, they can't shoot with Vogue, they can't shoot with whatever that weekend, and they need to block out that time for you, even if it's for a wedding where they're going to be with you for 3 hours. If they're in that state, that city, that province, they can't take on another project. So how much does it cost to lose out on those other contracts? That's also what you have to consider. But I think that it comes with, depending on the stage that you're in, those are things that you eventually might have to consider. So it's not a one size fits all, a bit of trial and error, lots of research, look around and see how many people, like what are people charging, your competitors and people that are in similar fields. And sometimes you have to try. And then, but the most important thing is just sticking to your price once you reach that stage when you're comfortable charging what you're charging. If anybody was super curious, as for me, it runs like around, it's hourly is about 80 to 120, around that in that range. And I feel comfortable sharing that now. Before I was like, oh, I think it might be 85. What do you think? And I'm like, it's 80 to 100. Like, that's what it is.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I think that transparency is nice. Obviously, we don't expect that of everyone on this call, but that's great. Siobhan, I see you have your hand up if you wanted to unmute yourself.
Good afternoon, ladies. I just wanted to jump in here quickly and kind of share a little bit about what you guys are talking about, and again, feed in. I'm on the very top end of this scale. I'm 5 times certified industry leader and expert. So I encourage you ladies to really walk in and identify who you are and why you're worth so much. So I come in and I say 5 times certified industry leader expert in fireworks, pyrotechnics, and Canada's first woman swarm drone pilot. And I take that with pride now in walking into the room. And when we talk about value and we talk about pricing, in terms of fireworks, I start at $1,500 a minute. And I walk in and that's my price. Now, my competitors are at $2,000 and $3,000 a minute. So I do come in at a different price scale, but they have a different minimum and standard. So really, I encourage you ladies to show your value. And that's really what you price on. You are valuable. What you're doing is valuable. And that's how I'm able to really turn the shift. Now, in terms of what I'm doing now with drones, we do advertising in the sky. So we're now creating words, logos, even QR codes in the sky. And again, like somebody was saying in here, I'm not even beginning to have a conversation if you don't have a minimum budget of $25,000. And what I've found has been a headache is anybody who you haggle with in the beginning ends up being a complete headache in the end. You run around, you bend over backwards, and they're never happy. So I've learned to wean them out really, really early. Get rid of the headaches as soon as you can, if possible, because it will progress. It never gets better. And no matter how much money it is, it's not worth the headache. And I've actually now added in a stress fee because people who are doing high pressure situations like weddings and events where things have to be on point and they've got stress on their end to make that deadline, they tend to want to transfer it to you. So I've now added that in as a bonus for myself to know when I'm going into these situations where they're coming in short times, like less than my 30 days, or they're coming in less than the X amount of time. Now you've got to pay an express fee. Now you've got to pay a stress fee. And these are things that I encourage you to make as your standard because they don't think about it at the end when their event is done, they walk away and they don't think about the toll that it takes on you mentally, physically, on your kids, on your household, on everything else that's involved. So that's my little nugget here that I really encourage you because I used to walk into the rooms and people used to be, okay, like, what do you do? And, I was a little bit, it was a borderline. Are you bragging or are you stating? But you are what you are. And if you can own that, and the quicker that you can tell people what you are, the quicker that you can make partnerships and people can work with you. So again, ladies, if anybody in here needs any kind of advertising or sky or fireworks, we do also sell fireworks for personal use, but we're here for really advertising in the sky. So that's my spiel.
Nice, Siobhan. I just wanted to say to all you ladies also, I've been 10 years as a public relations expert, right? 10 plus years in the US and Canada. And then I'm building an app and it's for anybody in advertising, right? Because what I have is 17,000 entrepreneurs who need access to all of you. And they're willing to pay you, right? They're willing to pay you. So all you have to do is drop in how much do I need for me to complete my service? And the AI algorithm will match you to an entrepreneur who also needs the service that you provide. So it's a bit of a marketplace. We called it media. So it's media with the T, but also the word itself we wanted to assume because he who controls the media controls the message. And after I saw all these right-wing types and all the nonsense, I was like, no, we're going to get back to like helping entrepreneurs get to you podcasters, to you advertisers. So, I've left the link if anybody wants to just enter their detail for what it is that they do. We will match you to people who need. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you for allowing me to do that.
Thank you for sharing, Megan.
I just wanted to touch really quick because I know that like I think it was said how everybody's at a different stage. There might be people in this chat or room who are just starting their business too. So I think for me, the pricing part of it, I kind of really just sat down and thought, yeah, what are my skills and what do my clients actually need? Like, what am I actually helping them with? What is their end result? I know that's a big part of marketing is what's their problem? How do I solve it? But I think it's a really great option also to look at your pricing in that same way and then build packages around the need. That's our probably most popular thing that we get hired for is a program that really has nothing to do with specific graphic design. It's about like identifying that a lot of small businesses need support in some way. And I know what my time is worth, but I also know what I can accomplish. Like if I charge an hour, I don't necessarily work for that full hour. I just charge based on how long it may take them or somebody else. And then we offer these packages to small businesses. So instead of hiring a full-time graphic designer on their staff, we offer them like a package, hourly package per month. But again, do I put the 4 hours in? Not necessarily, but we kind of, depending on the scope of work, we'll kind of map out that pricing. And the other thing that I would say is I decided to also build out 3 sort of levels because I always want, I want to help everybody. I think everybody deserves somebody in their corner, but I also know that I am building and what I need to make in order to make my life happen and my value. So I also ended up we have a base level of our services, and then I have this like crazy, we can do it all for you package that allows everything else to kind of show their value. And well, the next step is like this huge amount of money. And some people are happy to pay that because they just want it all done and the stress taken off. But it allows that sort of our regular offerings to still feel like, oh, okay, well, that's not as extreme as the biggest one. And then I also started a school community that's like a monthly subscription. So I'm like, I have all this knowledge and all these things that I want to share, but I can't spend time sharing it with people without burning out my time. So I created like a space where I was able to put all of this information into and then continually earn some money off of that so that it's accessible to pretty much anybody who wants to start a business, go after their dream, or just needs help with basic things without having to hire us per hour, but then we're still able to, make a little bit of money off of that knowledge. So I know that we've all kind of said a few different things, and maybe I would love to be more transparent about what things cost for sure. But yeah, I think Amanda said it best, not best, but had mentioned something in the beginning about like really understanding what your clients need from you, and then knowing that you don't just have one sort of thing. You'll have to kind of trial and error it in a sense, but always focusing on what it is that the client actually needs or customer needs from you. Yeah, I feel like I should have some brainy thing to finish that with, but I don't. So here you go. This is me being vulnerable.
No, that's great. Thank you so
Real
much,
human,
Megan.
party of one over here.
No, I love it. Okay, we are very close to our breakout room, so there's tons of topics we had like predetermined that we're not going to get to. So when you go to those breakout rooms, some of the things we were going to talk about were AI and advocacy for underrepresented groups and building your business structure. So feel free to use some of those when you go to the rooms. Before we go into the breakout rooms, I just want to end with one last question for our speakers, which is I'm curious about each of your experiences choosing and working with collaborators. For example, Shaw, I know you work with community partners a lot, or Megan and Amanda. When do you choose to collaborate with other folks or businesses, or even when you take on clients, like is there a conversation about if a client proposal matches the mandate of your organization or your ethos? So before we go into the breakout rooms, I would love to as we're in this collaborative conversation and we're about to go into networking, and with that question, maybe I'll pass it to you first, Shaw. How do you explore collaborators?
Collaborations? Ooh, I'm not connected. Hold on. Can everybody hear me? Perfect. Collaborations are not easy. Knowing when it's a good decision, knowing if they are a good fit with your organization or group. Sometimes it's a bit of trial and error, but I would say the most important thing and what's helped us is to have a very strong brand, some strong values, and a structure that makes it easier to sort of filter out the good opportunities and the good opportunities that come our way versus the ones that could still be good projects, good events, good things or services, but it might not be a great fit for us. So I've actually had an experience recently where I was working on a project that I was hired for. And I think what's important is to be very upfront with, what you can offer, even your personality type, certain things like for me, there's certain things that come with me where I am very detail oriented. You will get updates from me via email. you will get that weekly check-in. And so if you are not, if that's not really something that you like and you just want the thing done and you don't really care how it's done, or, if it's very detail oriented and that's not really important, we might not be the best fit. I might just be annoying to you if I'm being honest. I'm also a project manager, so I like for things to be done well, but also with like a project management focus. And so I've worked with a few people that, I've helped them launch their business, like host the launch event, for example. And if I'm planning it, I'm going to be asking you about, your social media accounts, your website. And if I see a bug in your website, I'm going to tell you, because I know that as an entrepreneur and as an owner, it's important to have those things sorted out before you launch. Because when we do the launch party and everybody's going on your website and, the engagement spikes and you have a bug, that's not the image you want to have. So I will point these things out to you because I want it to be a complete project where you get everything from me. But some people just want like a sort of planner / admin assistant where you just do the tasks that I ask you and nothing else. And that's also okay. It's just that I won't be a good fit. So knowing what you bring to the table, your personality type, and everything that comes with that, your character, your values, having that be very clear from the beginning will help you weed out the good opportunities from the bad. When it's wishy-washy and you're sort of, open to everything and willing to accept everything, that's when you get into dangerous territory where you might get into some bad situations with collaborators. But if you're open from the jump, it's a lot easier to weed out the good ones from the bad ones. I had a recent interaction with someone. This is not as serious, but I still thought I'd mention it. I had a recent interaction with someone who was looking to book me as a planner for an engagement. And the more I asked questions, the more I was like, are you ready for the engagement? And I think that it's still worth asking, because if my values are, if I have certain values when it comes to those things, I'm not going to tell you don't get married, but I'm going to point it out like, hey, I think you should know her favorite color. I think you should know some things that are, super no-goes for her, or at least, some things that are, you should know her personality enough to know if she would want something that's public versus private. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but usually in my experience, this is what people usually come to me with. But some people would just prefer, hey, these are my list of things. This is what I want you to put on, and they want nothing else. And that's also okay. But I will point some things out to you if I find that they're odd, because I will be in that room with that person that's getting engaged, and she's going to be surprised, but also disappointed. And I don't want that to be your experience. So I think it's worth mentioning, but, knowing what you bring to the table and knowing who you are really well, I think will help you quite a bit.
Yeah, that's great. Megan.
Yeah, I know we don't have a ton of time, but I just have a really quick thing to add. Number one, I think as women, we have great intuition. That's something that makes us awesome over men. Not that that's maybe there's probably a statistic about that, but trusting your gut, always number one. If it feels off, it's 100% off. And two, just one thing that I did in my business this past year was not be afraid to, be authentically me and share very transparently who we are, what our values are. And even in our contact form, I ask a lot of questions. And when people inquire and they don't answer any of those questions, it's usually a no-go for me. If you're not going to answer those questions, then we aren't going to work well together. So having systems in place, almost like little checkpoints as your potential client is going through your branding, your website, your social media, whatever it is. If there's your social media or your marketing turns them off, great. That's the whole point. And so those things are really, really important. And I think Shaw said that, don't be afraid to be authentically yourself. That'll always sort of begin to flush. It's not perfect, but it'll flush out anybody who's just they're not my vibe. And I hate that word actually as I say it, but that's fine. Being authentically yourself and really trusting your gut. I know it's when you're new in business too, you get so excited when someone wants to work with you, but it's really, really important to trust your instincts and really is this actually going to, propel my business forward, or is it just because I need to make money? And just kind of really being honest with yourself in those moments. So that's what I wanted to share.
Thank you so much for sharing. Amanda, I'll pass off to you and then we'll move into our breakout rooms if you have anything you'd like to add.
Yeah, sure. That was great, Megan. I was gonna say the same thing about trusting your gut, and a more to build on that, a really tactical tip too is when you're creating work agreements, always outline the termination clauses, not only for them but for you. I have terminated contracts with clients that were speaking rudely to my contractors. I had clients that wouldn't honor pronouns of my contractors, and like there are certain things that I just know it's a hard line and we have to just end the working relationship, but how can we do it in a way that's professional and that I'm still going to get paid? And so having a termination clause, which for us is that we give 1 month's worth of notice. We will complete all work that was agreed upon up until the moment of notice. We will be compensated for work that has been completed, and I have the opportunity to terminate without, like, I don't have to disclose why. So there is that termination clause in my work agreements for that very reason. And then on the other side too, so that's like me with the clients. And then when I'm looking for partners that I'm bringing in, like to work within underneath me, I've also unfortunately been led astray. And I think this is just this is just business. And when you do a lot of partnerships and when you're working with a lot of people, there's bound to be some bad apples. Um, and sometimes too, like things have, I didn't clock it and I'm like, damn it, I wish I would have known. And so like one example was that I never offered marketing services as part of my podcast production. We were just production. And I thought, oh, maybe I'll partner with someone who can offer the marketing. I am going to get them to give me a specific rate. I'm going to top that rate up, and we're going to come in as a collaborator to work on this for a client. And so I made an arrangement with an organization that I knew based out of the US. And and I say that only because it's like none of you here. It was somebody across the border, but they ended up we sold that package, and then they ended up pulling out and just saying, no, we want double the price for that work. And I was like, well, I didn't even charge that much to the client. Can you honor the rate that we agreed upon? They said no. Like these are things that just happen sometimes. And so in that case, I ended up just, scrappy. How can I figure out how to execute on all of these things or as close as possible? And actually a good thing came out of this story is that I was able to execute on some things slightly different, some things even better. And I went, well, now I have a marketing package that I offer and it is in-house and it's part of how my business has grown. And that marketing package has actually been sold a lot in the last year. And so that all happened within, thank you, the last year and a half. So sometimes when there's like stressful moments like this, it can actually lead to really good areas for growth. And so, yeah, being really careful with who you're trusting, and always being prepared to maybe coming up with a plan B if things don't work out.
Thank you for sharing, Amanda. Okay, we're finally going to make it to our networking breakout rooms now. So while we set these up, I'll just go through what is to be expected in these. The breakout rooms are to provide you with intentional networking with each other. It's sort of like speed dating, as presumably you're all working in the arts and media space. So please use this time to get to know one another. Perhaps there's someone in the room that can help you with a roadblock you're currently facing, or they could provide an introduction to someone or share a good resource. So we do ask that you ensure everyone gets a chance to speak, and is respectful to everyone in the room. We'll do 3 rounds of breakout rooms, and they'll each be just under 10 minutes. So you'll see a little thing pop up on your screen to join a breakout room now.